6 people, 6 centuries, one goal: never die. Every one of them failed, except maybe the last one. And that is exactly what should scare you. I am Blackwell. If you are new here, this is the third and final part of the series. The first one crossed 800,000 views. The second one, over 1 million. You already know the pattern. Humans have been trying to outrun the one thing that cannot be outrun, and every century we get more creative, more expensive, and more convinced that this time we will actually do it. This time will be the one. This time, the trick will work. Tonight, I want to walk you through 6 attempts. 6 human beings who looked death in the eye and said, "Not me, not today, not ever." I will give you their names, their dates, their doctors, their doses. I will tell you exactly how each of them tried, and I will tell you exactly how 5 of them died. The 6th one is still walking around. That is where this story gets uncomfortable. Before we start, I need you to understand something. I was inside the cryopreservation facility in Scottsdale, Arizona in 2019. I stood in the room where the tanks are kept. I watched the gauges on the outside of the dewars. The liquid nitrogen boils off at a slow to him and to the one that comes after. Let me begin. The first emperor of China drank liquid metal to live forever. It killed him at 49. His name was Ying Zhang. He was born in 259 BC in the state of Qin in what is now central China. By the age of 13, he was king. By the age of 38, he had conquered every rival state and unified them into a single empire, the first China had ever seen. He gave himself a new name. He called himself Qin Shi Huang, which in the language of his court meant the first emperor. Not just an emperor, the first. He believed there would be thousands after him, his dynasty stretching forward 10,000 generations. He was paranoid. He had good reasons. 3 separate assassination attempts were made on his life. One was a dagger concealed in a rolled-up map. Another was an iron hammer thrown at his carriage. Each time, he survived by a margin of seconds. After the 3rd attempt, he stopped sleeping in the same bed twice. He built connecting corridors between his palaces so no one would know which room he was in on any given night. He traveled constantly. He trusted almost no one. And the more he survived, the more obsessed he became with the idea that there must be a way to avoid dying at all. Why should a man who had defeated every army on Earth still have to bow to something as ordinary as time? He sent expeditions east, across the sea, to find the islands of the immortals. A court official named Zhu Fu was given 3,000 young men and women and a fleet of ships and told not to return without the elixir of life. Zhu Fu sailed away. He never came back. Some historians believe he reached what is now Japan and simply settled there, preferring a quiet life on a foreign shore to coming home empty-handed and facing execution. When the expeditions failed, Qin Shi Huang turned to the alchemists of his court. These were men who claimed to understand the hidden properties of metals, the way gold resisted rust, the way certain substances glittered in the dark. They told him something that sounded, to him, like a revelation. They told him that mercury, the silver liquid that ran like water and reflected the sky, held the essence of permanence. It did not corrode, it did not dull. It was, they said, a liquid that behaved like a solid, a metal that behaved like a ghost. Drink small quantities of it, prepared in the correct way, and the body itself would take on that quality. The body would become permanent. He drank the pills. He drank them for years. We do not know exactly how many. We know that by the final years of his reign, his behavior was changing. He grew erratic. He had outbursts of rage. He suffered from tremors in his hands. He was losing his hair. His teeth were loosening in his gums. Modern toxicologists look at the historical accounts and see, with no ambiguity at all, the symptoms of severe chronic mercury poisoning. The pills he believed were making him immortal were killing him a day at a time. In the year 210 BC, he was 50 years old by modern counting. He was on a tour of the eastern provinces, traveling in his imperial convoy. He fell ill on the road. Within days, he was dead, collapsed in his carriage somewhere near a place called Shakyu. And here is the detail that tells you everything about what kind of empire he had built. The chief minister, a man named Li Si, did not want the news to leak before the imperial court could secure the succession. So he kept the body in the carriage. He kept the convoy moving. He kept the curtains drawn. And because the summer heat was intense and the body began inevitably to rot, he ordered wagons full of salted fish to be placed in the procession around the emperor's carriage, so that the smell of the dead fish would mask the smell of the dead emperor. The first emperor of China, the man who built the Great Wall, the man who buried an army of terracotta soldiers to guard him in the afterlife, the man who sent fleets across the sea and fed himself poison in search of eternal life. His final journey home was a parade of rotting fish designed to hide the fact that he had decomposed exactly like everybody else. This is the founding irony of the whole story we are about to tell. The man who feared death the most became the template for how not to cheat it. He swallowed the thing that would kill him because someone told him it would save him. And every single attempt that followed for the next 22 centuries has been a variation on exactly this mistake. Someone tells you what the secret is. You believe them. You pay for it. You swallow it. And you die, usually earlier than you would have otherwise, convinced right up to the last moment that you almost had it. Remember that. It happens again. It happens in every portrait in this story. Now I want to take you to a castle in the mountains of what is now Western Slovakia 400 years ago, because the next attempt is not about swallowing. The next attempt is about bathing. A Hungarian countess believed youth lived inside other people. She collected it. Her name was Elizabeth Bathory. She was born in 1560 in the town of Nyírbátor, into one of the most powerful, noble families in the Kingdom of Hungary. The Bathory name carried real weight. Her uncle had been the King of Poland. Her cousin was the Prince of Transylvania. She was educated in multiple languages at a time when most European noblewomen were not educated at all. She could read Latin, she could read German, she could read Hungarian and Slovak. She was, by every contemporary account, intelligent, striking in appearance, and cold. At the age of 15, she was married to a man named Ferenc Nadasdy, a famous military commander who spent most of his life on campaign against the Ottomans. He was called the Black Knight of Hungary. Their marriage gave her a new title and a new address. Choctice Castle, a stone fortress perched above a village in the Little Carpathians. It was the kind of castle that was already old when she moved in. Walls thick enough that sound did not travel out of them. Her husband was almost never there. He was off fighting a war that lasted decades. She ran the estate herself for nearly 30 years. She managed the lands, the household, the servants, the finances. She became known in the region as a strict mistress, extraordinarily harsh with the young women she employed as maids and laundresses. But this was the 16th century, and harsh nobles were not a new category. Nobody outside the castle thought much about it. In 1604, her husband died. He had been weakened by years of campaigning, and in the end, something simple took him. Possibly an infection, possibly poison. The record is not clear. Elizabeth was 44 years old, a widow, still beautiful by the standards of her time, and now completely independent. The Nadasdy wealth was enormous. The estate was hers to command. She had no husband to answer to, and no children old enough to override her decisions. That is when the stories from Choctice began to change. It started with complaints from local families. Their daughters had gone to serve at the castle as maids, as was customary for peasant girls of the region, and the daughters were not coming home. Sometimes the families were told the girl had died of illness. Sometimes they were told she had run away. Sometimes they were told nothing at all. The bodies, when there were bodies, were buried quickly in the castle cemetery, without the usual ceremony, without the priest being called in time. At first, it was only peasant girls, and the complaints of peasants did not travel far. But Elizabeth began running out of local supply. She began recruiting daughters from minor noble families, promising to educate them at the castle, to introduce them to society. Those families had voices. Those families wrote letters. Those letters eventually reached the Hungarian court. What the countess was actually doing inside Chaktice Castle became the subject of a formal investigation ordered by the Palatine of Hungary, Count Georg Thurzo, in 1610. Dozens of witnesses were questioned: servants, guards, priests, families of the missing. The investigators collected testimony that described in detail decades of cruelty toward young women who had been brought into the castle under false pretenses. The numbers that emerged from the testimony were staggering. Some witnesses spoke of dozens, some spoke of hundreds. One servant, under questioning, mentioned a private ledger kept by the countess herself, a book in which she had recorded the names of every girl she had taken. The witness claimed the number in that book was 650. The ledger, if it existed, has never been found. And here is where the legend attaches itself to the facts, and where I have to be careful with what I tell you, because this is where the story turns from a criminal investigation into a myth about immortality. The legend says that Elizabeth Bathory believed the blood of young women held the secret of eternal youth. The legend says she bathed in it. The legend says she would stare into her mirror each morning, searching her face for any sign of aging, and whenever she found one, she would summon another girl. The investigators of 1610 did not record a confession to this exact practice. The myth of the bloodbath appeared in accounts written years after her death. Some historians argue it was invented later to justify the political seizure of her enormous estate. But whether she bathed in it or not, the core of the story holds. Here was a woman of almost unlimited wealth, isolated in a castle in the mountains, convinced that her own beauty was slipping away with each passing year. And she believed, in some form, that the solution to her own aging lay inside the bodies of women who were younger than her. She extracted something from them. Whatever the exact method, the result was the same. Dozens of young women did not come home. She was never put on trial. She was too highly born. A public trial of a Bathory would have shaken the entire nobility of Hungary. Instead, Count Thurzo brokered a compromise. Her accomplices, the servants who had helped her, were tried and executed. Elizabeth herself was sentenced to permanent house arrest inside her own castle. And the way they carried out this sentence has become one of the most haunting images in European history. They took her to a small chamber in the castle. Stonemasons bricked up the doorway. They left a single slot through which food could be passed. And they left a single narrow opening for air. That was it. No windows to the outside. No visitors. No light except what came through that single slit. The woman who had spent her life collecting the youth of others was placed inside a stone room and left to age in the dark, entirely alone, with nothing to do but listen to her own breathing and count her own heartbeats. She lived like that for almost 4 years. In August of 1614, a guard came to deliver food and realized there had been no sound from inside the wall for several days. They opened the chamber. They found her dead on the floor. She was 54 years old. The irony is almost unbearable. She had spent decades trying to freeze her own face in time. She had collected, in whatever form, whatever quantity, the lives of women who were young and would have stayed young if she had left them alone. And when they finally stopped her, they did it by sealing her into the one thing she had been fighting her entire adult life. They sealed her into time itself. 4 years of nothing but aging. 4 years of her own body doing to her, slowly, what she had tried to prevent by doing it quickly to others. If you are keeping score, that is attempt number 2. A Chinese emperor who swallowed the poison. A Hungarian countess who tried to borrow what she was losing. Both of them ended the same way. Both of them ended exactly the way everyone else ends. The only difference was the price other people paid on the way. Now I want to move the story forward almost 300 years into a different country, a different century, a different world. Because the next attempt is the first one that looks, at least on the surface, scientific. The next attempt happens inside a white-tiled laboratory in Moscow, and the man running the laboratory is a revolutionary who believed that science could solve the final problem. A Soviet scientist believed blood was the secret of eternal life. His own blood ended him. His name was Alexander Bogdanov. He was born in 1873 in a small town called Sokolka, in what was then the Russian Empire. His father was a school teacher. He trained as a physician. He was brilliant in a way that did not fit neatly into any one field. He wrote on medicine, he wrote on philosophy, he wrote on economics, he wrote a famous science fiction novel in 1908 called Red Star, about a utopian Martian society where the citizens regularly exchanged blood with one another to extend their lives and strengthen their community. That detail in the novel was not decoration. He believed it. He thought it might actually work. Bogdanov was one of the founding members of the Bolshevik faction. He was, for years, considered second only to Vladimir Lenin in influence within the movement. He and Lenin argued constantly. They argued about philosophy, they argued about strategy, they argued about what kind of revolution they were actually trying to build. By 1909, Lenin had pushed him out of the leadership. By the time the revolution arrived in 1917, Bogdanov was a marginal figure politically, no longer trusted by the men who now ran the country. He withdrew from politics. He went back to his medical research. And in 1926, he convinced the Soviet government to fund something no country in the world had ever funded before. He convinced them to build the first national institute dedicated entirely to blood transfusion. It was called the Institute for Blood Transfusion, and it opened in Moscow with Bogdanov as its director. The stated goals were practical: transfusions for wounded soldiers, transfusions for surgical patients, transfusions for accident victims. These were all reasonable, useful, life-saving applications of a new technique. But Bogdanov had a second goal, and he was open about it. He believed, based on his Martian novel, based on his own theoretical work, that regular transfusions between younger and older donors would rejuvenate the older recipient. He believed the blood of a young person carried something. He did not know exactly what. He called it the essence of vitality that could refresh the body of an older one. He believed this so completely that he volunteered himself as the first test subject. He began giving himself transfusions in 1924, before the institute even opened. He did not trust anyone else to supervise the procedure. He ran his own experiment on his own body. Between 1924 and early 1928, he received 11 transfusions. The donors were volunteers. Some were students, some were colleagues. The blood was matched as well as the science of the day allowed, which was not very well. Blood typing had only been discovered in 1901. The procedures for matching donor and recipient were still crude. Bogdanov knew the risks. He believed the benefits outweighed them, and he reported, in his own notes, that the benefits were real. After his early transfusions, he claimed his vision had improved. He said his hair was growing back. He said the wrinkles on his forehead were softer. He said he felt the way he had felt 20 years earlier. Some of his colleagues agreed with him. Others thought he was seeing what he wanted to see. He had a theory, and he was testing it on himself. And a self-test by a true believer is the worst kind of evidence in the world. In the spring of 1928, he performed the 12th transfusion. The donor was a young male student. The student had recently recovered from tuberculosis. The student was also, as it would later emerge, carrying malaria in his bloodstream, possibly contracted during travel. The blood matching was incomplete. The procedure went ahead anyway. The transfusion was a direct exchange. Bogdanov gave the student a quantity of his own, older blood. The student gave him a quantity of young blood in return. This was the theory of mutual vitality from the novel. Both donor and recipient would benefit. Both would be refreshed. The student survived. The student actually recovered fully and later wrote about the procedure with something close to gratitude. Bogdanov did not survive. Within hours of the transfusion, he began to exhibit symptoms of hemolytic reaction, his own body attacking the foreign blood cells, and the student's diseased cells attacking him. He developed a high fever. His kidneys began to fail. His urine turned dark. Over the next 2 weeks, his condition worsened, with periods of false recovery followed by further collapse. He died on the 7th of April, 1928, at the age of 54. He died from the exact procedure he had invented. He died in the institute he had founded. He died surrounded by the colleagues he had trained. The director of the Institute for Blood Transfusion was killed by a blood transfusion. The scientific revolution he had tried to lead, the one where human beings would finally escape death by sharing vitality between each other, ended in a single room in Moscow, with a single body on a single table, drained and refilled one too many times. I want you to notice something about these first three. Qin Shi Huang believed the answer was inside a medal. Elizabeth Bathory believed the answer was inside other people. Alexander Bogdanov also believed the answer was inside other people, but he dressed his belief up in the language of science, with an institute and a budget and a methodology. Strip the language away and the core idea is identical. Take what young bodies have, put it inside an older body, become young again. The method changes, the belief does not. And now we cross into the modern era. Now we cross into the 20th century proper, into a world of liquid nitrogen and insurance contracts and cryogenic tanks in the desert. And this is where I have to tell you about the man I went to see in Scottsdale in 2019. But first, I have to kill a rumor, because for my entire life, and probably yours, there has been a story floating around that the first famous person to be frozen after death was Walt Disney. You have heard this. Everybody has heard this. The story says that when Disney was dying of lung cancer in 1966, he arranged for his body to be preserved in a freezer somewhere under Disneyland, waiting for future medicine to revive him. The story has been repeated in books, in documentaries, in magazine articles for almost 60 years. It is not true. It has never been true. Walt Disney died on the 15th of December, 1966. He was cremated 2 days later. His ashes were interred at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale, California. The grave is there. You can visit it. There is no tank. There is no freezer. There is no secret chamber under the Magic Kingdom. The rumor seems to have started the year after his death in a gossip magazine, and it spread because it was a better story than the truth. The truth was boring. The man died. The man was cremated. The man was buried. The rumor was immortal. The man was not. The reason the rumor stuck so deeply is because something almost exactly like it really did happen the very next month to a completely different man whose name almost nobody remembers. That man's name was James Hiram Bedford. He was a psychology professor at Glendale College in California. He had been born in 1893. He was 73 years old in 1966 when his doctors told him he had kidney cancer that had metastasized to his lungs. There was no treatment that would save him. He had, they estimated, months. Most people in his situation would have spent those months getting their affairs in order. Bedford did something different. Bedford had been reading the work of a physics teacher named Robert Ettinger, who in 1962 had published a book called The Prospect of Immortality. Ettinger's argument was simple. Medicine was advancing. What was incurable today would be curable tomorrow. Therefore, if a person could be preserved at the moment of death, preserved well enough that the structure of the brain remained intact, then at some point in the future, perhaps a century from now, perhaps 5 centuries, medicine might be able to revive them, cure the disease that had killed them, and give them back the rest of their life. The book inspired a small, scattered community of believers to form an organization called the Cryonics Society of California. Bedford contacted them. He made arrangements. He wrote out the instructions. He paid for the equipment. He chose the people who would do the work. On the 12th of January 1967, in a nursing home in Glendale, James Bedford's heart stopped beating. Within minutes, a team was at his bedside. They had been waiting for this call. They began the procedure they had rehearsed. They cooled his body with ice. They administered a compound designed to prevent the formation of ice crystals inside his cells. They packed him into an insulated container. They transferred him to a facility where he was placed, for the first time, inside a capsule of liquid nitrogen at a temperature of -196 degrees Celsius. He has been in liquid nitrogen ever since. Read that sentence again. He has been in liquid nitrogen ever since. Not a few years, not a few decades, since January of 1967. He has outlasted the Vietnam War. He has outlasted the Cold War. He has outlasted the Soviet Union. He has outlasted the rise and the fall of every political movement, every fashion, every celebrity, every technology of his era. He has outlasted the company that first preserved him. He has outlasted several storage facilities. His tank has been moved multiple times. In 1991, his body was transferred to the Alcor Life Extension Foundation in Scottsdale, Arizona. That is where he is tonight. That is where he has been for the last 34 years. Floating in a vertical steel cylinder, upside down, surrounded by cold. In 2019, I was in that building. I will tell you what it looks like, because almost nobody outside of a very small circle has seen it, and the reality is different from the picture in your head. You imagine, probably, a laboratory, something sterile, something white, bright lights, humming machines, scientists in coats. It is not that. The facility is an ordinary industrial building on an ordinary street in an ordinary part of the American Southwest. You pull into a parking lot. You walk up to a regular glass door. Inside, there is a reception area that looks like the lobby of any small office. There are framed articles on the walls. There is a book of signatures from visitors. There is a small display case with some of the early equipment. The tanks are in the back. You walk through a door, down a short corridor, and you step into a room that feels, more than anything else, like a warehouse. High ceilings, concrete floor, industrial lighting. And standing in rows along the floor, bolted into place, are the dewars. They look, at first, like giant thermos flasks, 10 feet tall, white, cylindrical. Each one has a small control panel on the side with a temperature readout and a liquid nitrogen level indicator. The gauges are analog. They tick over slowly. Every few seconds, you hear a small hiss as nitrogen vapor vents through a release valve. That is the sound of the air inside the room. A constant, soft hiss, like a long exhale that never ends. Each dewar holds multiple patients. Yes. That is the word they use. Patients. Not bodies, not corpses. Patients. In the vocabulary of cryonics, death is not a final event. Death is a medical condition that has not yet been treated. The patients are not deceased. They are in a waiting state. The technicians who work there refer to a patient's arrival date the way a hospital would refer to an admission date. They speak about the patients in the present tense. In one of those dewars, in that room, at that facility, is James Bedford. He entered the tank at age 73. He has never left. The technician who showed me around told me, in the same tone of voice he might have used to tell me about the heating system, that Bedford's condition is considered stable. The temperature has not fluctuated outside of acceptable parameters for more than 50 years. The tissue is holding. The contract is being honored, and here is what stays with me. Here is what I keep coming back to. There is a man in that room who was born when Grover Cleveland was President of the United States. He was born before the airplane. He was born before the radio. He watched both world wars from a classroom in California. He raised a family. He chose his own fate. He signed the papers, he picked his doctors, he paid the fee. And in the moment his heart stopped, he was lifted out of his century and placed into cold. He has no idea how much time has passed. If you believe the theory, he has no idea of anything. There is no dream inside the tank. There is no perception. There is only the structure. The pattern, the information that was him, held in a form so cold that it cannot change. The thermostat has not changed. He has not changed either. Now I have to be honest with you about something. Nobody has ever been successfully revived from cryopreservation. Nobody. Not a single human being. The technology to revive James Bedford does not exist. It has not been invented. It may never be invented. Every person currently in those tanks is betting on a future that might not come. They are betting that human medicine will one day solve problems that, today, we cannot even clearly describe. They are betting that somebody, 100 or 500 years from now, will still be checking the nitrogen levels. They are betting that civilization will continue to care. That is a large bet. Most people would say it is an impossible bet, but the people in those tanks have already lost every other bet. The bet against death itself. They are playing the last hand they have. James Bedford has now been in that tank for almost 60 years. He did not cheat death. He paused the conversation. He is still waiting for somebody to answer. Let that sit for a moment before I take you into the last two portraits, because the last two are different. The last two are alive. The last two are walking around right now in 2026 as I record this. The last two are still writing their stories in real time, and one of them might actually win. Which is a sentence I never thought I would say out loud. Let me introduce you to the fifth one. A Google engineer is swallowing 80 pills a day. He plans to upload his mind by 2045. His name is Ray Kurzweil. He was born in 1948 in Queens, New York, into a family of immigrant intellectuals. His father was a conductor. His mother was a visual artist. He was a precocious child in a way that even other precocious children noticed. He was programming computers at the age of 12, at a time when most 12-year-olds in America had never seen one. He appeared on a national television quiz show as a teenager and performed a piano piece composed by a computer he had built himself. He was admitted to MIT, where he studied computer science and literature in parallel. He has never stopped inventing since. His inventions are real. This is important. Kurzweil is not a man who talks about technology from the outside. He has built things that changed daily life for millions of people. In the 1970s, he developed the first text-to-speech reading machine for blind users, a device that could scan a printed book and read it aloud in a synthesized voice. It was a breakthrough. It won him national recognition. He went on to develop digital music synthesizers that are still used in professional studios today. He founded multiple companies. He sold multiple companies. He wrote books. The books are where the Immortality Project comes in. In 1999, Kurzweil published a book called The Age of Spiritual Machines. In it, he argued that the exponential growth of computing power would, within a few decades, allow machines to equal and then surpass human intelligence. He predicted the rise of ubiquitous smartphones. He predicted the global dominance of the internet. He predicted machine translation that would work in real time. Most reviewers thought he was wildly, embarrassingly wrong. 25 years later, most of those predictions have come true, sometimes ahead of his own schedule. In 2005, he published the book that defines his public identity. The title is The Singularity is Near. The argument, stripped to its bones, is this. Technology is accelerating. At some point, probably around the year 2045, the rate of change will become so rapid that the concept of a human generation will no longer make sense. Artificial intelligence will be able to redesign itself faster than biological humans can understand what it is doing. And at that point, a new option will open up for anyone who is still alive. You will be able to scan the contents of a human brain, every neuron, every connection, every pattern of activation, and upload that information into a digital substrate. Your mind, in whatever form minds exist, will run on silicon instead of tissue. You will no longer be tied to the body you were born in. You will no longer be tied to death. Kurzweil is not joking. Kurzweil has never been joking. Kurzweil has organized the last 40 years of his life around a single goal, which is to personally survive until the year 2045, at which point he believes he will be able to upload himself into a more durable form. He calls this goal the bridge. The idea is that he has to stay biologically alive just long enough to reach the technology that will let him leave biology behind. And to stay alive that long, he does something that, depending on your point of view, is either the most rigorous personal health regimen of the 21st century or a medically supervised performance of obsession. He takes somewhere between 80 and 100 pills a day. The exact number has fluctuated over the years. The regimen has been designed in consultation with physicians who specialize in preventive medicine. It includes vitamins, minerals, supplements targeting specific metabolic pathways, substances that support mitochondrial function, compounds believed to reduce inflammation, agents designed to regulate insulin sensitivity, and much more. He has his blood tested constantly. He adjusts the regimen based on the results. He has been following this protocol, with modifications, for more than 3 decades. He also changed his career trajectory to serve the goal. In 2012, at the age of 64, he joined Google as a director of engineering, specifically to work on machine learning and natural language understanding. He wanted to be inside the company that was most likely, in his view, to build the artificial general intelligence that would make the upload possible. He is still there, in one form or another, working on exactly that problem. He is 78 years old as of this recording. He is still alive. He is visibly older than he was when I first saw him speak more than a decade ago. His hair is white. His face has lines. He walks more carefully. He is, in every observable way, subject to the same process that everyone else is subject to. The difference is that he believes, with complete sincerity, that he is in a race, and that if he can just hold out for another 19 years, he will cross the finish line and leave the body behind entirely. There is something genuinely moving about this, and I will not pretend otherwise. Kurzweil is not a con man. He is not selling anyone else a pill. He is not charging admission to a castle. He is not killing anyone. He is, essentially, running an experiment on himself, the same way Bogdanov did, but with better tools and a longer horizon. He is betting his own life on his own prediction. If he is right, he will be the first person in human history to survive the death of his own body. If he is wrong, he will die like everyone else, quietly, at some hospital, at some age, and the pills will have been for nothing. And here is the uncomfortable part, the part that I want you to sit with. The predictions Kurzweil made 25 years ago, the ones people laughed at, have mostly come true. The smartphones in your pocket, the machine translation in your browser, the AI assistants that can hold a conversation, all of it. He called it. He was mocked, and then he was right. So when a man who has been right about nearly every major technological prediction of the last quarter century tells you that in 2045 he intends to upload his consciousness, you can still think he is wrong. But you cannot dismiss him as a fool. He has earned, at minimum, the right to be taken seriously. Whether he reaches 2045 in good enough health to even attempt the upload is another matter. Whether the technology will exist at that date is another matter. Whether an uploaded mind would, in any meaningful sense, still be him is another matter, and a deep one. But Kurzweil has answered all of those objections in print, at length, for decades. He is not surprised by any question you can ask him. He has been thinking about this longer than most of his critics have been alive. And so here is the picture. An American inventor in his late 70s, widely respected, professionally accomplished, financially comfortable, takes 80 pills every morning with a glass of water and goes to work on the machine he believes will save him. He is not raving. He is not bleeding anyone else. He is just waiting. He is the quiet version of the immortality story. He is what Qin Shi Huang might have looked like if the alchemists of the Qin court had been replaced by a team of Harvard-trained physicians and $1 billion research budget. He might still be wrong. He might not. That is 5. 5 portraits: an emperor, a countess, a Soviet physician, a frozen professor, a futurist with a pill organizer. And now I have to bring you to the 6th. And the 6th is the one that makes this whole story feel different. Because the 6th one is not waiting for a future technology. The 6th one is running the experiment on himself, in real time, in public. and the preliminary results, and I choose those words carefully, the preliminary results are not nothing. A tech billionaire is using his 17-year-old son's plasma to stay young. He live streams it. His name is Brian Johnson. He was born in 1977 in Provo, Utah, into a strict Mormon family. He grew up in a culture of discipline, of hard work, of expected piety. He served a 2-year mission for his church in Ecuador in his late teens, which is where, by his own later telling, he first began to question the framework he had been raised inside. He came back to the United States. He went to Brigham Young University. He started a company. He failed. He started another company. He succeeded. The company that succeeded was called Braintree. It was a payment processing firm. It handled the back-end financial plumbing for a generation of apps you have used. In 2013, Braintree was acquired by PayPal for approximately $800 million. Johnson, as the founder and majority holder, walked away from that deal with a personal fortune in the hundreds of millions. He was 36 years old. He had everything that the American version of success is supposed to deliver. He was also, by his own account, severely depressed. He had been depressed for years. He had been hiding it for years. The money did not fix it. The success did not fix it. His marriage dissolved. He went through a period he later described as the darkest of his life. He considered whether he wanted to continue at all. He came out of it slowly, and he came out of it with a new obsession. The obsession was his own body. Starting around 2020 and formally launched in 2021, Brian Johnson began what he calls Project Blueprint. The premise is simple to state and extraordinary to implement. Johnson decided that he no longer trusted his own judgment about how to run his body. He decided that his mind, the organ that had spent decades making choices that led him into depression and exhaustion and near collapse, should not be allowed to decide what he ate, when he slept, or how he exercised. Those choices, he concluded, should be taken out of his own hands and delegated entirely to a team of scientists and physicians operating on data. He hired the team. He assembled a group of more than 30 medical and scientific professionals, including physicians, exercise physiologists, nutritionists, sleep researchers, and others. He gave them a single mandate: measure every measurable parameter of his body, optimize every one of them, reduce his biological age, slow every marker of aging that can be slowed, reverse the ones that can be reversed, spare no expense. The expense, by his own public disclosure, is approximately $2 million a year. His daily schedule is published. It is not a secret. He wakes up around 5 in the morning. He measures himself immediately. He exercises for roughly an hour through a carefully designed protocol that targets strength, cardiovascular output, and flexibility. He eats exactly 3 meals a day, all before early afternoon, all composed of the same ingredients in the same quantities, pre-measured and pre-weighed. He takes more than 100 supplements. He does not eat after early evening. He goes to bed around 8:30. He sleeps alone in a dark room with an array of biometric sensors tracking every variable, including his heart rate, his skin temperature, his oxygen saturation, and the quality of his sleep cycles. The next morning, he worked April 19th, 2026, 10:30. Dale. April 19th, 2026, 10:38. April's up, he measures himself, and the cycle begins again. He has been doing this for more than 5 years. He has published his results in public. Some of those results, independently verified by his physicians, are remarkable. His bone density is that of a much younger man. His cardiovascular fitness exceeds the average of people 20 years younger. His skin aging, measured by specific markers, has reversed in several categories. His sleep quality is, by objective measurement, unusually high. The rate at which his body is aging, according to several composite biological age indices, appears to have slowed below the normal rate of 1 year per year. In some measurements, it has even reversed. I want to be careful here. The science of biological age is new and contested. The indices that produce these numbers are not fully validated. The experiment has a sample size of 1. The subject of the experiment is also the funder of the experiment, which is exactly the methodological problem that doomed Bogdanov a century ago. Johnson is not blinded. His physicians are not blinded. Everyone involved wants the numbers to look good. Under those conditions, you should expect the numbers to look good. But the numbers are not nothing. And that is a sentence I do not say lightly. Then there is the part of Project Blueprint that put Johnson on the front page of every newspaper in the world in 2023. He began receiving plasma transfusions from a teenage donor. The donor was his own son. Talmadge Johnson was 17 years old at the time. The procedure was called a 3-generation plasma exchange. It involved Brian receiving a quantity of his son's plasma, while Brian's own plasma was given, in turn, to his own father, who was in his 70s. 3 generations of the same family, sharing blood, in a clinical setting, on camera, on the public record. I want you to hear the echo of that. I want you to hear it clearly. 400 years ago, in a castle in the Carpathians, a countess locked up young women and, according to the legend, tried to take their youth. 100 years ago, in a Moscow laboratory, a physician strapped himself to a tube and took blood from a student and believed it was making him young. And in 2023, in a modern American clinic, a tech billionaire received plasma from his 17-year-old son on a live stream with the son's full and publicly stated consent for the exact same purpose. The method has improved. The belief has not changed. Johnson himself, to his credit, has since said publicly that the plasma transfusions did not produce the results he had hoped for, and that he has discontinued that specific intervention. He moved on to other protocols. He is constantly experimenting. He adds new interventions. He drops old ones. He is, in effect, running a continuous public trial on a single subject, himself, and publishing the data as it comes in. And I want to explain to you why I think Johnson is the most important figure in this entire story, more important in his way than any of the 5 who came before him. It is not because he will succeed. He might not succeed. He is 50 years old in 2027, the year after this recording. He has decades of biological time still ahead of him, if he is lucky, and every one of those decades will introduce new variables he cannot fully control. He might have a car accident tomorrow. He might develop a cancer that none of his screening panels catch. He might reach the age of 95 and simply, quietly, stop, like everyone else. Nothing about his regimen guarantees anything. He is the most important figure in the story because of what he has done with the idea. He has turned it into a product. He has turned it into a brand. He has turned it into an aesthetic. For most of human history, the pursuit of immortality has been a private obsession, conducted behind closed doors, in castles and temples and laboratories, hidden from the public. The public only learned about it after the pursuer had died. The whole point was privacy, because the pursuer did not want to look foolish if it failed. Johnson did the opposite. Johnson made the pursuit itself into the show. Every measurement, every protocol, every meal, every supplement, every biological age readout is posted publicly. The failures are posted. The setbacks are posted. The photographs of his own face, month by month, are posted. He has made his own body into an ongoing television program, and he has built a business around it. He sells his supplement stack, bottled under his own brand, to anyone who wants to buy it. He sells testing. He sells his protocols. He speaks at conferences. He has written a book. He has become, in a way no one before him ever was, a professional immortal. This is what I mean when I say he is the modern Bathory. Not because of any cruelty. There is no cruelty here. His son consented. The procedure was medical. The context is entirely different. But the fundamental architecture of the story is the same. A wealthy person, isolated from normal feedback by that wealth, becomes convinced that the ordinary rules of human aging do not have to apply to them. They assemble a private infrastructure around themselves. They draw younger people into that infrastructure as donors, as employees, as sources of whatever is needed. They make their own body the project. They make the project into their identity. The difference, and it is a real difference, is that in Johnson's case, almost none of it is hidden. He wrote the castle wall out of glass. He invites you in. He streams the procedure. He is honest about the cost. He is honest about the failures. He is, on his own terms, running the cleanest version of this experiment that anyone has ever run. And that is why this portrait disturbs me more than any of the others. Because if he is right, if even a fraction of what he is trying actually works, then something is about to change in human civilization that has never been up for negotiation before. Death has always been the one universal appointment. Rich people and poor people have different medical care, different lifespans, different outcomes in every possible category except one. They all die. 100 years ago, a rich man and a poor man both died, maybe at slightly different ages, but both gone. 1,000 years ago, the same. 5,000 years ago, the same. Death has always been the one line that nobody crosses. If Brian Johnson, or someone like him, figures out how to push that line back by 20 years, by 50 years, by 100 years, then that discovery will not arrive as a gift to all of humanity on the same day. It will arrive first for whoever can afford it. It will cost, at the beginning, something like $2 million a year, because that is already what it costs him. Only a handful of people on Earth can spend that amount of money every year on their own body indefinitely. Those will be the first people to extend their lives. And then, as the technology matures, the price will come down, and the next tier of wealth will gain access, and then the next. And eventually, maybe, after decades, ordinary people. But the window between the first access and the last access could be very long, could be a generation, could be longer. What does a civilization look like when some people can afford to live to 150 and other people still die at 75? What does it do to politics when the rich are not just wealthier than the poor, but biologically older than the poor, with 50 extra years of accumulated experience, wealth, and influence? What does it do to the concept of an inheritance? What does it do to the workforce, to retirement, to the meaning of a career? What does it do to elections when a candidate can physically run for another 50 years? What does it do to childhood when the gap between you and your parents is no longer a generation, but a century? What does it do to religion, which has, for every civilization in recorded history, been built around the fact of death? We have no answers to these questions. Nobody does. Because nobody has ever had to answer them. The universality of death is baked into every institution we have built. Remove it for some people and not for others, and those institutions stop working. This is the part that scares me, and I think it should scare you. It is not that Johnson might succeed, it is that if he does, the first version of the success will not be shared. It will be owned. It becomes a subscription. Think about that word for a moment. A subscription. Something you pay for, monthly, to keep it active. Miss a payment, and the service ends. If immortality becomes a product, if the plasma exchanges and the biometric sensors and the supplements and the uploads all resolve into a single offering, priced, marketed, optimized, then survival itself becomes conditional on payment. You pay, you continue. You stop paying, you stop continuing. That is the logic of every service-based business that has ever existed. And if you think no one would build it that way, you have not looked at how anything else is currently sold. Qin Shi Huang paid his alchemists in gold. Elizabeth Bathory paid her servants in silver. Bogdanov paid his volunteers in rubles and ideology. Bedford paid his preservation fee before his heart stopped. Kurzweil is paying, daily, in pills. Johnson is paying $2 million a year and posting the invoices online. The price keeps going up. The results are getting more specific. The people involved are getting better at not dying quickly. And that is where I want to leave you tonight. I want to circle back to the room in Scottsdale. I want to put you inside it one more time because I think the room is the clearest picture of what this whole story is about. You are standing on the concrete floor. The lights above you are industrial. The doers are in front of you, in rows, humming softly. The nitrogen vents hiss every few seconds. Inside one of those tanks is James Bedford, who has been floating, upside down, at minus 196 degrees Celsius since Lyndon Johnson was President of the United States. He is waiting for a call. The call has not come. The call might never come. But the tank is still topped up, the gauges still read within parameters, and somebody is still paying the maintenance fee every month. Bedford was the first. 650 years earlier, a countess was walled into a room in a Hungarian castle, aging alone because she had tried so hard not to age. 2,000 years earlier, an emperor died on a road in central China with silver poisoning in his blood. 100 years earlier, a Soviet scientist died on a table in Moscow from the procedure he had invented. 5 of them lost. They lost in different ways, in different centuries, with different tools, but they all lost the same game. The house always took the money. The house always took the body. The house is still taking them tonight, every minute, all over the world, one human at a time, the same way it has always done. One of them has not lost yet. He is 50 years old. He wakes up at 5 in the morning. He measures himself. He eats the same meals in the same order. He takes the same pills. He goes to bed in a dark, quiet room, alone, wired to a constellation of sensors. And every morning when he wakes up, the numbers say he is holding the line, maybe even pushing it back. If Brian Johnson dies at 78 of an ordinary heart attack, this was all an expensive hobby, and the story ends the way every other story in this series ends. He joins the emperor, the countess, the physician, the professor, and the futurist in the long, quiet parade of people who tried. If Brian Johnson lives to 130, measurably younger than any 130-year-old in recorded history, still walking, still talking, still running his company, then something changes. Then the question is no longer whether death can be cheated. The question becomes who gets to cheat it, and at what price, and under what terms, and what happens to the rest of us who cannot afford to. That is the world your children might live in. That is the world your grandchildren almost certainly will. I am Blackwell. I have told you 6 stories tonight. 5 of them ended. 1 of them has not. The man in the tank in Arizona is still waiting. The man in Venice Beach is still awake. The emperor is still dead. The countess is still dead. The Soviet physician is still dead. And the question the rest of us are still being asked, whether we know it or not, is what we are willing to pay, to whom, and for how long, to avoid being next. 6 people, 6 centuries, 1 goal. They never stop trying, not one of them. And the strangest part of this whole thing, the part that nobody wants to say out loud, is that the pattern keeps producing the same ending with different costumes. And each generation is absolutely certain that this time, the costume is the trick. Qin Shi Huang was certain the pills were the trick. Bathory was certain the ritual was the trick. Bogdanov was certain the science was the trick. Bedford was certain the cold was the trick. Kurzweil is certain the upload is the trick. Johnson is certain the data is the trick. Maybe one of them is right. Maybe the data is the trick. Maybe, for the first time in human history, we have finally stopped chasing a metaphor and started chasing a fact. Maybe the difference between Johnson and all of his predecessors is that Johnson does not believe anything. Johnson only measures. And measurement, as a method, has a much better track record in human history than belief does. Or maybe he is exactly the same as the rest of them, and the only difference is the camera is on this time. I do not know. I do not know which one it is. I have stood in the room in Arizona, and I have watched the gauges, and I have listened to the hiss of the nitrogen, and I still do not know. I suspect nobody will know until Johnson reaches the age that would settle the question, and by the time he reaches it, if he reaches it, the world will already have started reorganizing itself around his answer. The laws will be different. The economy will be different. The insurance industry will be different. The politics will be different. You will not get a chance to vote on whether humanity should pursue this. Humanity has already voted. Humanity voted with Qin Shi Huang. Humanity has been voting the same way in every century since. That is the thing about a pattern this old. You do not have to believe in it for it to be shaping your life.
You do not have to approve of it for it to be spending your tax dollars 20 years from now on the first nationalized longevity clinic, which will serve the people who can afford the waiting list. You do not have to consent to it for it to change what your grandchildren consider a normal life expectancy. 6 portraits. I said that at the start. I want to close by naming them one more time because I think names matter, and because most of these people are remembered either as villains or as jokes, and I do not think they were jokes. They were people. They were afraid. They were brilliant, some of them. They were cruel, some of them. They were wrong, all but possibly one of them. They did not want to stop being themselves. Every human being who has ever lived has had that same wish, at least once, usually in the dark, usually alone. These 6 people just had the resources to act on it. Qin Shi Huang, first emperor of China, died of mercury poisoning in 210 BC on a road, in a covered carriage surrounded by rotting fish. Elizabeth Bathory, Countess of Hungary, died in a sealed chamber of her own castle in 1614, alone in the dark, after almost 4 years of silence. Alexander Bogdanov, physician, philosopher, revolutionary, died on a table in the institute he had founded in 1928, killed by the procedure he had invented, trying to give and take life at the same time. James Hiram Bedford, professor of psychology, has been floating in a steel tank in Scottsdale, Arizona since the 12th of January, 1967, has not yet been revived, has not yet been declared a failure either. Ray Kurzweil, inventor, futurist, Google engineer, 78 years old as of this recording, taking his pills, waiting for 2045. Brian Johnson, founder of Braintree, founder of Project Blueprint, 50 years old, awake, on camera, measuring. 5 of them failed. 1 is still writing the sentence. And the most disturbing thing I can say to you, after 2,200 years of examples, is that the pattern has not weakened. If anything, the pattern has strengthened. The money involved is larger than it has ever been. The science is more sophisticated than it has ever been. The public attention is higher than it has ever been. The social permission to pursue this openly as a career, as a brand, as an aesthetic is greater than it has ever been. Whatever this impulse is, whatever the thing is in human beings that refuses to accept the one appointment nobody skips, that thing is not going away. It is growing, it is getting richer, it is learning from every previous failure, it is paying closer attention, and sooner or later, somebody is going to win a round. Maybe not the whole fight, maybe not forever, but a round, a real round. 20 extra years, 30 extra years, 50 extra years, bought at a price most people cannot pay. And the moment that happens, the moment the first clearly verified, independently confirmed, scientifically defensible case of human life extension hits the newspapers, the entire organization of human society, the retirement age, the insurance markets, the inheritance laws, the family structure, the very idea of a generation, all of it will have to be redesigned in real time by people who do not fully understand what they are redesigning. That is not science fiction. That is the current trajectory of the current technology, extrapolated forward by a single decade. Which brings me back to the sentence I said at the beginning, the one I want you to leave this video with. Every one of them failed, except maybe the last one. And that is what should scare you. Because if he does not fail, the world your children inherit will not be the world you grew up in. It will be a world where death is no longer universal.
It will be a world where mortality is priced, tiered, and sold. It will be a world where the rich are not just wealthier, but older, in the deepest biological sense, and the young who cannot afford the price live and die in the old pattern, while a small number of people simply do not. That is the subscription. That is the thing I did not want to say out loud and said anyway, because you deserve to hear it from somebody. I am Blackwell. I have told you the story, as well as I know it, with the names and the dates and the rooms. The next block of videos is about something completely different. Mistakes. Catastrophic human mistakes. The ones that changed a city, a country, or a species in a single afternoon. You know the shape of the next series already. You know the tone. Subscribe if you want the archive. Comment if you know something I did not tell you. I read the comments. I answer some of them. You would be surprised which ones. And before you close this video, do one thing for me. Close your eyes for a second. Picture the room in Arizona. Hear the nitrogen hissing. Picture the gauge on the side of the dewar, steady, unchanging, month after month. Picture the man inside it, from 1893, waiting. Now picture a second room, 50 years from now, somewhere else. Same gauges, same hiss. A different man, younger, maintained, not frozen, not dead, not waiting, just continuing. Paying the bill every month, measuring himself every morning. Alive. Still alive. Still alive. Still alive. That is the future one of these 6 people is trying to build. 5 of them failed to reach it. The 6th one is still walking toward it in Venice Beach, California, at 5 in the morning in a dark room with sensors on his body and a scale in front of his breakfast and a team of 30 people whose entire job is to keep him exactly where he is. Never getting older, never getting younger, never ending. Sleep on that. I will see you in the next one.